Hi, Lucas Southerton here. Today I'm going to show you how to make a balsa wood glider. This is an enrichment activity for my class. This is also a TSA project, so if you're in TSA and want to learn how to build the gliders, you can watch this video. Let's take a look at the materials. Right here are your supplies. Of course, the instructions. Be sure to read the instructions from beginning to end before you start building. Answer any questions. If you're in TSA, it'll be a separate set of instructions. Big piece of paper, some cardstock, a few pieces of balsa wood, the wing blank, the fuselage blank, the stabilizer blank, the fin, and the shark tooth, some sandpaper, a razor blade, some modeling clay, a little bit of super glue, and some pins.
What is that stuff called?
Modeling clay.
Modeling clay.
Yep. Okay, so I finished reading the paperwork, answering the questions, checking my answers. Now I'm just going to follow the step-by-step instructions. So, first I'll trace my balsa wood onto the cardstock. And now I actually get to design my glider. So, for instance, this is going to be the fin. Maybe I'll do something like this. The idea is whatever you want it to be, you're going to draw it inside the little rectangle that you made. This will be my fin.
So draw it inside that rectangle.
Yep.
Okay.
So basically, obviously, you can't make it bigger than the piece of wood that it's coming from. So that's going to be the fin. This is my center point. And I'm just going to design half of the wing. Now, when you're designing these, it's your airplane, so you can make it look however you want. I think I'm just going to do something.
What is that?
I kind of like these gradual curves.
What is that? What is this?
Next, I'm going to cut these out with scissors to create my patterns. I have all the parts cut out of the cardstock. Right here's my fuselage. Right here's my shark tooth. Right here is the wing. Right here's the horizontal stabilizer. And right here's the vertical stabilizer. Now it's time to do... Alright, so next I'm going to do a drawing of each of the parts. And for the most part I can just trace them onto the paper. I will have to dimension it. A ruler will come in handy for drawing some of the straight parts. Anyways, I'll get started, and when I'm finished, I'll show you the results. Here's my finished drawing. It looks pretty complicated, but remember, all I did was trace all the parts from my pattern. So the fuselage, the wing, stabilizer, the fin, and the shark tooth. And then I give the height, width, and thickness, or length, width, and thickness of each of the parts. So let's just look at the stabilizer, for instance. I have the length, the width, and the thickness. Length, width, thickness. Again, each of those parts is shown. Make it nice and neat. By the way, you'll notice that these measurements are in millimeters. If you're in TSA, they'll have to be in millimeters. If you're doing it for class, you could do it in inches as well. I don't care. Make sure the measurements line up or correspond to the chart and the directions. And when I'm done, I'll use the same pattern and transfer it to the balsa wood.
Be quiet.
I have all the patterns traced onto my balsa wood. Now it's time to cut it out using my razor. If you just have a bare razor like this, make sure you wrap it with some tape so that it gives you a handle. And make sure you have a piece of cardboard for your cutting surface. So it's time to cut out. I'm going to use my razor blade and just carefully cut along the line. You don't have to go through it all in one pass. So I'm just gently following along my line here. It's actually probably good to try to stay a little bit on the outside of the line. You'll see that's not separated, but if I just keep on doing more passes, it should separate. Okay, there we go. So that came right off. Take a look at my shark tooth here. Notice how quickly I can get that shape just with the sandpaper. So don't be afraid to use the sandpaper to help you get your parts. Anyway, you'll cut them all out and then you'll assemble. Good luck. So these are my parts cut out. I do want to show you how to add a dihedral to the wing if you want. So the dihedral is a V in the wing. What I'm going to do is already figure out where the center is, but I'm going to score this. Scoring means just lightly cut about halfway through the wood.
It's just to make a base.
So that is scored.
You make a
And
base.
then I'm going to stick it right on the edge of the table and bend it along the score until it breaks just a tiny little bit. That dihedral, or V in the wing, will make it more stable. It's optional. I'm about to start gluing. I'm doing some setup here. The gluing takes careful practice. Nothing's glued yet. But especially with this dihedral, I want to figure out ways to support it. I got some blocks here. But I think I got things pretty much figured out. I popped the thing on my super glue. Super glue is extremely sticky. It'll glue your fingers together in no time. So make sure you're very careful with that. Also, just use a tiny, tiny little bit and let it dry. If you want to add more later, you can. Anyways, I guess I'll start with the shark tooth. Why don't you just get a close look here of how little glue I'm putting on. So just a tiny little bit.
Tiny little bit.
And then I'll, again, put the shark tooth on.
It doesn't. It's
Now,
very
at
stiff.
school I have this stuff
very
called
stiff.
accelerator, which can make the glue dry instantly, or cure instantly, because it's a chemical reaction, really. This stuff is going to have to dry overnight, or at least for
It's going to
for a
have to
couple hours.
dry overnight. Church
Keep going.
bigger. A church has a cross. Here's the church. And I'll draw a cross.
Sometimes
on it.
people like to use these pins to hold things in place
And
while the
then
glue
I'll draw-
dries. Oops.
Jesus got nailed into his
Pretty
foot.
tricky.
Yes, it is. A lot easier with the accelerator spray. I add a little bit of tape to hold that fuselage in place while I glue the wings on.
Hold it up. Hold your glue up.
Anyway, so adding my glue. You'll notice I put a little mark on the fuselage where the wing's gonna go.
The wing's gonna go. You're doing a sticky project.
Yeah. And I think I'm gonna pin that down while that glue dries.
With that Mary.
Another little tip. I made little rectangles. The shark tooths are notorious for falling off. So I'm actually gonna put just a little brace on either side of the shark tooth to keep it on there. Okay, not required, but just a little thing that helps it. And you know, if you want to put some bracing elsewhere to hold things together, you can do that. Okay, so I have my plane finished. Let the glue dry for about half an hour. Gonna put a little bit of modeling clay on the front to give it a little bit of weight. Now, if you're doing this for a TSA project, you need to test it using this flight catapult. You pull it back and let it go. That actually spun pretty nice. If you're just doing it as a class enrichment activity, I don't care if you just throw it.
It went behind Mom.
While you're doing this, you can have somebody with a stopwatch or a stopwatch on a cell phone, and you can be filling out the flight log, which kind of looks something like this. So there's a place where you say how long it stayed in the air. The flight pattern
Here, Daddy.
is, you know, how it flies. Does it go to the left? Does it go to the right? Does it go up and stall, then fly
goes
down again?
up.
Does it just nosedive? You want to describe it?
Goes up.
The last thing you'll do is trim adjustments. So each time you throw it, you want to do something different.
Airplane.
So one thing I could do is just like maybe sand the edges a little bit to try to create like an airfoil effect. That actually can make a huge difference by rounding the edges to make it more aerodynamic and create some more lift. Now I would have to do that for longer, but you get the idea. I could add clay, remove clay. I could change the way I throw it. Maybe I want to throw it way up and see what that does. Maybe I want to throw it down and see if it goes up. Anyway, have fun with it and good luck.
Mind if I give it a try?